Here in studio with Wine Talks with Paul K. Great to have you along with us. We're here to have a conversation with Franz Leth of Leth Winery. Introductions in just a second. Wine Talks, of course, available on Spotify, Pandora, iHeartRadio, wherever you are hanging out for podcasting, and sponsored by the Original Wine of the Month Club. Hey, some great episodes coming up. Just got done with an ad hoc podcast with Alexandra of winery in Artsakh, Armenia, that was removed from the rolls by the Azerbaijans when they took over the country. And so it's a great, interesting story, a sad but interesting story. Listen to that coming out soon. But we're here with Franz Leth of Leth Winery, and we've already had a great conversation. I didn't want to waste it anymore, but welcome to the show, Franz.
Nice to be over here.
Thank you. I hope this is what part of this trip are you on? Are you at the end, the beginning? Are you almost done? What are we doing?
Yeah, I'm already here since Monday last week, so
Wow.
close to a week traveling through the US. You know, our business is here something that we must renew a bit because of changing import, and that's why we did a longer roadshow already.
That's a long way.
About over the whole continent
Yeah.
almost.
All the way from what, the East Coast? You started on the East Coast?
Yeah, we started in New York
Wow.
for a couple of days, then moved over to Denver. From there to the Aspen Food and Wine Show. I guess you
Really?
probably know.
Yeah, sure. That's great. It's a great
And
venue.
then, sorry?
That's a great venue to display wines.
Totally. If you see all the amazing people over
Yeah.
there, the whole industry seems to gather there.
Yeah,
So,
it's beautiful.
And the scenery for sure also very impressive. Yeah.
So New York, we were there till when did we come back? Connor, it was Wednesday? No, Tuesday. Were you there last weekend?
Not at the
No?
weekend.
Okay,
No,
all right.
no.
We were there, and restaurants and the food in New York are amazing. But
Yeah.
you know what? What's interesting, off subject a little bit, but when we were in New York, we didn't sense any of the problems that are being broadcast here in Los Angeles about the crime rate and the issues. I'm sure they exist, but where we were in New York, you're in Manhattan, obviously.
Yeah.
It seemed rather safe. I felt comfortable there.
I never got
Never felt anyway?
the feeling that I can be heard anything
Yeah,
in
right,
every
yes.
place. So no,
It felt normal.
okay. Normally, when you're selling wine, you just visit a bit more the prettier places.
That's true. That's true. You are at a different level of, particularly the wines of your quality, and this level of Austrian wines, which we don't see a lot of here. And I can see New York being a great location, particularly with the restaurants and the chefs that want to use these wines. We'll talk about Gruner Veltliner in a minute about how that works with food. But let's talk about the winery for a second. This is Leth Winery, and it's the Weingut, which means what, winery in Austrian or in German as well. No,
Yeah. Yeah.
but you brought this brochure, and it's a great picture of the whole family here.
Yeah.
And I can't remember. You got your wife on the left here. You're sitting there. Your daughter's there. Who's in the back?
That's my brother.
Was your brother?
Yeah.
Your older brother?
No, in fact, he's a bit younger. But
Oh boy! See, now this is the kind of thing when you say stuff on the air that maybe he's going to find out that I.
maybe traveling keeps younger than
Yeah,
working
maybe.
in the vineyard.
It could be. It could be. And your son's there, and your niece, and then
Yeah.
who's the last woman on the? Is
Yeah.
your sister?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, the sister-in-law.
Sister-in-law.
My brother's wife.
So this is a true family business.
Yeah, exactly. That's a family business where all of us are working in the same place. All of us are having a bit of the whole business to overlook.
Yeah.
That means my brother is in charge of domestic business, of wine growing, vineyard management. My son, who is actually already the third generation to run the winery,
Wow.
he is a winemaker. My wife, my sister-in-law, they overlooking warehousing, order consolidation, all that stuff. So that's a really family-driven business. For sure, we cannot do everything our own, but it's our aim to do the best with our engagement in the true passion for our place for our wine.
Well, it's clear to me in the wines because that's where it has to end up in the bottle. And such a dynamic range of wines, a dynamic complexity, grape varietals, the whole thing. And it's. Let me just ask you, how is not this? I bought this company from my father. I mean, I will say we had a deal, we had a negotiation. You know, you mentioned your father passed last year. My father passed a few weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, and we got along really well. You know, I was the guy, I was the son that saw life the way he sees life, and he's an entrepreneur. He came to America in 1949 from Egypt, and so we got along really well. But how does that dynamic work at the Leth winery? Does it work? I mean, your son's making the wine, and you're telling him, "Look, what's."
You know, I grew up on the winery from the very first moment. My parents got married in 1960. I was born 1961. And when you see that my parents started with more or less nothing, there was zero
Wow.
point 0.3 hectares of wine when they started. And
0.3 hectares.
yeah, and today this is about 80-hectare business.
Wow,
I
that's
guess you
great.
can see the development, and it was definitely for me to develop the whole scale up. Until I joined my family business, my dad had already set up kind of bigger business, but more towards the uh, basic style
Uh-huh.
of wine
Hmm.
that was in that times in Austria quite common, and it was up to me and my brother to bring up quality level. I guess in the meantime we are counted to one of the leading growers in our area,
Hmm.
being a member of the association of the leading wineries along Danube River. So I guess
You've done a good job. This is hard.
seem to be quite successful. Yeah,
This is hard because, and I've talked about this before. You only get one chance a year to make changes, right? So it's a very slow process to move the direction of a winery like that.
sure.
So the mission that your father started out with was he sat down with your mom and said, "I want to start a winery," and she said, "You're probably crazy." And then, so
It
that's what
didn't
happened to my
it
house.
didn't really work in that way, you know.
Okay, so, but what was his objective? Was it to turn the world on to Grüne Veltliner, or was it to best represent Austrian wines to the world? What was his idea?
His idea, he both of my parents came in from poor families, so
Hmm.
they had more or less nothing to lose. Yeah, if you
Yeah,
have nothing to lose,
that's
it's easy
true.
to start something,
Yeah, right.
and that was he did in a great way. Building up first step were a mixed agricultural farm, like most of the
Hmm.
businesses have been at this time.
Hmm.
But in the mid 70s, he recognized, okay, wine is the business where definitely the most profit is to made on, and then it was converted to a winery.
I don't know. I
And
don't know what industry you guys are in, but if you're making profit, you're doing pretty well so far. No, this is fascinating. So I'm just playing with you. It's what wine should be about. It should be the family. It should be the history. It should be the idea behind the passion that's in this bottle.
exactly.
And so, in the world of Austrian wines, how is that being received abroad, outside of Austria? How much are you exporting of the wines you're making, and how is that getting traction? Are you getting movement from
You
the?
know, when I joined the business, we didn't export any bottle. Uh,
Really? Wow, it's all
yeah,
stayed in time.
yeah, that was only domestic business at that time. So it was more or less my brother and me to expand the business to export markets. And since 1982, when I joined the winery, the first bottles to export was 1990, and from 1990 onwards,
Wow, 30
we
years.
were able to expand the business to about 80% of export.
Wow, 80%.
That's the current situation.
Again, another milestone that's hard to achieve in this industry when you're only getting one shot a year. You can only make wine once a year. That's got to be good when you do it, and then you have to get out and tell people that Gruner Veltliner exists. You know, the Lathe family vineyards. That's really a noble pursuit and a very difficult one in this industry. So your son decided to be the guy that actually is doing the work in the vineyard. How did that come about? Did he go to school? Is there Austrian wine school, or did he have to go to
You will
Germany? Or
you will be a bit astonished. My son and me we are both we were educated at the same
really?
school, at the same education place. It is the oldest wine school in Austria or even in Europe. This exists since 1860, and
Wow.
generations of Austrian winemakers have been educated over there.
Did you go
And
together?
Huh?
Did you go there together?
No,
Oh, you went there first.
that doesn't work. 20, 25,
That's why
25 years after me.
I just wanted who had better grades. That's all I was trying to figure out.
But we had some of the teachers were still the same.
Oh, well, that's interesting. Sharing notes, I suppose. You know, but,
No, but
how old is the wine trade in
uh,
Austria? Is it centuries old? Dozens of years? When
the,
did
the,
this
the wine
wine
grow,
industry?
the wine industry in Austria. That's a bit longer.
But I mean, is it
Commercial wine growing in Austria is roughly since 1100.
okay?
So
So it's rather
for
old.
1,000 years.
Was it
Yeah.
part of the church?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Where most of the vineyards, most of the wine culture and the knowledge about came mostly from the church. Yeah.
Because that always, we can jump right into this. It always fascinates me that those whatever technologies they were making then, however they used to make wine, and how did the monks? And of course, the comment's always been they had a lot of time on their hands, so I guess it was all right. But how did they know, that across the street was one vineyard that produced one style of wine and one vineyard produced another? How over the years, the natural selection of grapes to end up in particular vineyards is, to me, is astonishing, and how they figured that out.
Uh, that's astonishing. Anyway, when you see the vineyard land, we on the Wagram hillside. If you ever come to that, you will see wine growing on terraces because we have a soil type that is can easy be affected by erosion.
Mm-hmm.
It is just a powdery earth.
Mm-hmm.
And already at this time, they recognized that farming in
On a slope.
vineyards with the hill that doesn't work. So they already were inventing terraces, yeah,
Wow.
to have a flat part of land where the water can be sinking down to the soil rather than running away. So the
That's
whole
interesting.
hillside, which raises up for about three between 300 and 500 feet from the top and from the bottom to the top, is completely terraced. And these
Wow.
were already a work of monks in
Isn't
the
that
11th
amazing?
and 12th century.
Wow.
So they already recognized how to treat with the soil and how to treat with with the resources
Yeah.
of this land. Really
That's
impressive.
amazing. That's
Really
really amazing.
impressive.
They didn't have refractometers. They didn't have optical sorting tables. They didn't have any of this stuff.
Nothing of that.
I mean, I brought this up earlier. It'd be so interesting to be able to bring forward a fresh bottle of wine made by the monks of, not only in Austria but Burgundy or Bordeaux or, well, California didn't have that, but I think that would just be interesting to see and taste the character that they're producing, because they're using the same vineyard and the same land and the same grape. I mean, it
Oh,
couldn't be that much different.
yeah, for sure. For sure, the style of wine and the knowledge behind had so dramatically changed
Sure.
that was produced not even a couple of years. Let me say 100 years ago.
Yeah.
Doesn't have that much to do with a wine style of
Right.
today.
Yeah. For sure. I was supposed, but do you think I just had this vision of the monks sitting around, and there's always wonderful um, uh, etchings and drawings of these meetings with monks, and like our logo for the Wine of the Month Club is a 15th century German woodcut. That's where my dad
Mhm.
found it in a book, and so they're sitting around and I wonder if they're comparing vintages. I wonder if they're talking about the acid level. I wonder if they're talking about the fruit level, or they're talking about how great Gruner is compared to Riesling. I just wonder if those conversations took place. Do you think that was social? It had to be, right? It had to be part of their culture.
Absolutely. And what is the fascinating thing is that we are mostly coming back to the situation of farming. And when you see all the organic
Mm-hmm.
now certifications, when you saw wine growing 150 years ago, then it is almost that what we are doing again.
Isn't that interesting?
The meantime, you know what that were everyone tried to push everything, yeah, insecticide, pesticide, whatever, to gain more fruit, more healthy fruit. And what we are doing now, we are coming back to exactly the other situation.
You're the first. You're the first to say it that way. I bring it up because what were they doing? Everything was organic. It was maybe even biodynamic. Who knows?
Yeah.
Because even though what's his name wrote the book in 1929, the concept's old, right? So, and here we are. Here we are marketing this idea
Mhm.
when it was just the way it was.
That was the way it was.
Yeah,
You know,
that's what you did.
there had been 100 years ago no knowledge about insecticides,
No, right,
no knowledge about fertilizers,
right,
all that kind of stuff.
yeah.
They knew how to treat the resources, how to keep the resources for the next generations, and that's what we sometimes need to learn from that period.
Yeah, we have to call it sustainable.
Yeah.
Right?
Nowadays, sustainable. Okay.
When they were doing it anyway. But there was something you said that I wanted to just tell me that you're talking about, and I read this on your profile here about the the soil, which has 20 meters deep of this powder.
Mhm.
That's was it volcanic ash? Is that what it was?
No. It was brought to the area by winds after the last ice age, and it
Uh,
is nothing else than finest grinded chalk Alps.
really?
In my place, about 200 kilometers south of us, there are the ending of the Alpine area,
Uh-huh.
which consists the mountains there consisting of chalk.
Mm-hmm.
This was grinded finally by very fine by glaciers, by water. When the landscape got drier, the fine material was blown away and
Wow.
settled on the north bank of Danube on this hillside, on primary rock hillside.
Wow.
So in fact, it's nothing else than blown away dust
Yeah.
that consists of sand, clay, and limestone. Incredible, densely pressed over the 100,000 of years. But now the home for our wine, where the roots can deeply penetrate the soil,
So if you put your
pick
hand in
up
it, what does it
water.
feel like? Is
Yeah,
it hard when you put your hand in it?
you can bring out of the form with your hand.
Yeah.
Touch
Okay.
it, grab it, dust.
Wow.
Yeah. And on the other hand, you can build 10-meter high wall that stands on its own without any treatment.
Really? That's fascinating.
Yeah.
And then the monks figured out that if they terrace this, we won't lose that chalky
Exactly.
powder.
When water is running down, it
Just
takes it.
take it with
It
it.
takes it with it like sugar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that's why you have to build plain land where the water can sink down rather than running away,
So
and keep green management on it. That also helps
right,
to
right. So a
hold
couple of
water back.
questions. It must be hand harvested.
We do hand harvest
Yeah.
100% on the
I
estate.
mean, you couldn't mechanically harvest that with terrace.
You can,
You could.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
And then
if you like to. But we are one of the few wineries still holding on 100% hand
and
picking.
you irrigate this, or you don't have to irrigate
No, this soil is like a natural sponge. Water sinks in through the capillary system, but doesn't go completely through. And then being available for the roots of our wines for long periods.
Mhm.
So even longer dry periods, our wines can stand without any irrigation.
So 20 meters of this soil is 65 feet or so, and you're talking about roots that could be a little longer, but that 65 feet would be a pretty long root. in many cases.
To a depth about 8 to 10 meters, you find
Yeah.
roots of wine.
Okay. So it's getting all its character from this amazing
And
chalk.
then you can imagine that those wines can pick up enormous mineral
Yes.
from there, so they can feed the bunches very very well. So a wine from our area is much more has much more extract, so is a bit richer
But
than
minerality, the
yeah,
weight,
minerality,
complexity.
but balancing perfectly acidity.
Yeah.
So a wine style from Leth is most of the time a bit richer than from other
That
soils.
was clear
Yeah.
tasting these wines. Does Gruner like uh, does it like to represent where it's grown? I mean, like Pinot Noir is always known for its ability to adapt and to deliver terroir
Yeah.
in the glass. And I had a bottle last night of Zinfandel from California, from Sonoma, and it's the first Zin that I've tasted in a long time that delivered terroir. Usually Zin's opulent, overdone, extracted, big wine, too much alcohol. But this one just really, I thought to myself, I don't taste too much Zinfandel that delivers terroir, but these wines did. But does Gruner like to do that? Is it?
Definitely. Grüner Veltliner feels absolutely comfortable with Leth. It's one of the preferred soil types of Grüner Veltliner. Um, but also important is the microclimate.
Mm-hmm.
You need to see Grüner Veltliner likes a bit more water supply than other grape varieties and moderate climate conditions.
Mm-hmm.
The soil type itself around Austria is not so much important. Okay, when you see the extremes less in our place and primary rock a few kilometers west in the Wachau, there are major differences.
Yes.
But if you have Grüner Veltliner on, let me say, on clay soils or on gravelly soils, that doesn't make that huge impact. But together, that's always to see together with the microclimate conditions. Yeah, this is what makes definitely has a big impact in the style of wine.
So from you're west of Vienna.
Yeah.
Um, are you furthest west in the wine world? Are there little? Is there
No.
something more west
Yeah. There
as you
are
get closer to the colder climate
yeah.
there?
When you go from Vienna towards west, you meet first to the Wagram growing area where
Where you're
I'm
at,
from.
right?
A couple of kilometers after, you are in the Kamptal. Another couple kilometer Kremstal, and after the city of Krems, which is about 20 kilometers away from me, you are in the Wachau area. But you have to see that the valley of Danube is narrowing. The more you're gonna from Vienna towards west,
Mm-hmm.
the more narrow the
I
valley
see.
gets. Yeah. So the warm influence from the Pannonian side is more on our place, and the further west it gets cooler. Yeah.
I see. Okay, so it's cooler to the west, and then as you head east, you cross Vienna to the other side.
It gets warmer.
Continues to warm.
Yeah.
But you're saying the soil content is less dramatically different than it is, particularly in your location with the terrace chalk. But as you get to the west or to the east, there's less differences in the soil. Is that what you're saying?
There is a mainly lighter soil types like sand and gravel soils, which are better suited for red grapes. And that's the reason why in my place there is only about 15 to maximum 20% red wine growing, while east and southeast of Vienna, the majority of the grapes are red.
Really? Because still, even Austrian reds
Yeah,
are
yeah.
pretty rare here anyway in Los Angeles. I mean, I don't know about New York. I will say when I go to New York and I go to the wine shop, if it's properly stocked, I don't recognize hardly anything because the access to European wines in New York is much more prolific than here. But you would expect it a little more. But I find that interesting. So we're talking about lighter grape varietals like Pinot Noir, Spätburgunder, those kinds of things, or Is it
There is one grape for Austria that is by far the leading one, called Zweigelt.
Spegel? Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
a
I know.
relatively young grape variety, made in the 1920s, and a crossing between two other native Austrian grapes, and those two are also quite famous in Austria. This is Blaufränkisch,
The Blaufränkisch. Heard that.
and maybe you have heard about St. Laurent. So
That one I don't know, but Blaufränkisch.
yeah,
I've had tasted
yeah, yeah,
Blaufränkisch here many
yeah,
times.
yeah. A cross of Blaufränkisch and St. Laurent, so two native Austrian grapes,
Is
is Zweigelt.
Was
Yeah.
that a deliberate crossing? Do you know, or is it a natural that just happened? The DNA
No, no,
showed
no.
up.
It was made by mankind.
I see. Okay.
Mr. Zweigelt,
Yes.
that was his
Oh,
family
hey, he
name.
gets all the credit, huh?
That's why it's called Zweigelt. Yeah.
So-
So he did the crossing.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that. Talk about grapes. We've been to Croatia. We've been to the Dolomites. I've been to Bolzano. Where there's no wine, of course. Lots of pears there, but um, coming to America with Gruner, and recently it being a noble grape, I think you consider Gruner to be a noble grape for what it can produce. But how is it going up against Sauvignon Blanc and Chardonnay and even Pinot Grigio now in the marketplace, trying to move the idea of Gruner, because it's just not that popular.
Corona Veltliner in Austria is a grape variety that covers 1/3 of the whole production.
Wow.
But you need to see it is still local. If you go down to the area of Styria, so that's the border to Slovenia, for instance, then you will find no Gruner Veltliner at all.
Really?
They don't have even one plant. Yeah? So that's a grape variety
That's
that
so
is
interesting.
it really is almost addicted to the climate and soil types in our place. Gruner Veltliner would never thrive over there.
That's
It's-
interesting because I have this. It's not my own philosophy, but there's a reason why certain grapes do really well in certain regions, and they become the representative of those regions. And then there's a marketing side of it. Like, well, gee, if I'm going to grow Gruner Veltliner and try and sell it in California, that's a tough sell. But if I grew Chardonnay in Austria and it produced a palatable wine, I'd probably be able to sell it easier because it's Chardonnay and everybody knows what that is. So, have you guys thought about some French varietals or more popular varietals that people might?
We have also a small portion of Chardonnay.
Oh, you do?
While you mention, we have a small portion of Sauvignon Blanc, but that's mostly for the domestic market.
Yes.
There's
really?
there's no need to bring,
Wow.
at least for my opinion, to bring this to the international markets.
Yeah.
There is enough of that. Yeah.
Well, that's true. That's the other philosophy would be there's already enough, so why do you have to produce any more?
So we are concentrating on that what is typical for our place. And there's even one more thing that is so unique to my place, a Rota Veltliner. So this is what we concentrate.
Yeah, that was a fascinating wine, and I want to talk about that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it now. When I was going through the list of wines that you make, you make a Zweigelt, it looks like.
Yeah.
According to your website.
Even three of them.
No, 3 different ones.
Mhm.
And then, but this Roter Veltliner, which you told me is not related to Veltliner.
Yeah.
So
it sounds a bit confusing, I know. When you have Rota Veltliner on the label,
Yeah.
normally if you understand a bit of German language, you would expect, okay, that's a red wine that is closely related to the Grüner.
Yeah.
Nothing's true on that.
That's
Neither
so
the
interesting.
color nor the relation. Rota and Gruner Veltliner, they don't have anything to do with each other.
So your picture shows this Roter.
Yeah.
Obviously, this question has come up because it's a whole page of your brochure where you have a photograph of Veltliner, which has a very robust looking grape in color and in size, but next to it is the Roter Veltliner, which it's even darker than Gewürztraminer is at this stage of its ripeness. It almost looks like a regular red table grape.
Red varieties, so turning into pinkish or dark pink skin,
Yeah.
always supply white wine around the globe.
Yes. Right.
Just blue or black grapes supplying red wine. Yeah,
Because of the pigment in this thing. So
exactly. The slightly color inside, you are not able to take it out.
Yes.
Or for sure you can do long skin maceration, but then you get a kind of copper amber color that looks like oxidized wine. So
This
makes
is not
no really
attractive.
no that makes no really sense. You get tannic style out of it. That's not what we want. We wanna express with this grape variety the really concentration of this. This is a grape variety that has enormous richness on the palate, but combined with the acidity and the spiciness, this is a great food wine that can stand a bit more flavored style of
Yes.
kitchen,
Right.
especially umami kitchen and that all.
Yeah.
So that's great pairing with a lot of different foods.
It said I wrote here's my description.
Yeah.
Unreal.
Okay.
I just thought it, this is, and what's so interesting about tasting wines from Austria and other parts of the world that are less well known, you get to taste character that you've never tasted before. And that's the fascination for wine for me all these years is like, wow, this is something completely different than I've ever tasted. And my father and I used to talk about, he used to, he didn't like certain descriptors. He was a very 70s and 80s type taster. So he was like Michael Broadbent. He didn't like some of the contemporary words that are being used to describe wine. But regardless, this is a flavor you can't compare. You shouldn't say tastes like Gewürztraminer or tastes like Gewürztraminer. You should say this is the terms complexity and the minerality and the spiciness and whatever other terms you can come up with. But it bothers me when people say, "Oh, it tastes like whatever," and I'm like, "No, it doesn't. It shouldn't anyway, right? It should be its own thing."
That's we hear quite often when the question is Roter Veltliner. No, how does it taste like?
Yeah, right. What does it taste like?
How does it taste like? I'm sorry, that's its own.
That's
so
right.
It doesn't taste like any other thing. Yeah. So have a sip, discover this yourself. You will see it doesn't taste like.
Right,
Yeah?
taste it.
It's its own character.
Just taste it. But that's a. I just got back from. Well, not back. It was here in Southern California. It's called Guinea Fest. It's an Armenian wine festival. It was actually rather professionally done, and there were about 50 wines from Armenia. Armenia being, it's 6,000-year-old winery they found, and here there's some contemporary wineries that are making palatable wines. I think we're pretty good. There's some actually starting to become terroir-driven stories, and so here's the argument that I was just making earlier a little bit. They're so proud, they're such a proud nation that they only will want to provide Areni and Sireni and these indigenous Caucasian grapes. Whereas, we know that if they put Syrah in there, they'd probably sell more, or Merlot. And there's a whole different philosophy. There's two groups. There's one say, yeah, we're going to plant this stuff, try and sell the other stuff. But you're surrounded by Croatia, Slovenia, to the south, Italy. I mean, these are prolific wine growing countries that have completely different grapes.
Yeah.
That's fascinating to me that you're bringing these to the tables. Do you have any ancient, like varietals that are part of the Austrian heritage of wine?
Definitely, there are hundreds of them.
Really?
But you must see that wine growing, the way we do it, the vineyard treatment today, is completely different from that what has been done before World War II. There you had no rows, no tractor going through, no wired system
Really?
for the shoots to keep them upright. That didn't exist. Almost all those vineyards at this time had been mixed plantings. That means, but not really sorted up. So really, one
just
plant here, one over there.
Yeah.
And in those vineyards, you had an extremely wide array of different grape varieties, which nowadays almost all of them have disappeared,
Wow.
beside a few one. Yeah, and those grape varieties to maintain for a longer or for the future now was a project from my dad. So he was looking for
Wow.
those grape varieties
Wow.
where he could find them and planted them in one vineyard. And the collection today for this kind of Arkanoa, the DNA museum,
Yeah.
has grown to about 250 different grape varieties in one vineyard.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. So
It's a living grape museum.
that was that's what it is. But that was a passion of your father to find these things, bring them to the winery. And you wonder, don't you wonder, like which ones, why Gruner survived or why Riesling survived? Uh, and I find it really exciting to taste some of these indigenous Italian wines. There are some winemakers that in Campania they're trying to unearth these other old varietals and making just small bottlings of them. Are you making wine from these grapes?
We do one field blend. You know, field
Yeah,
blend.
right,
I
right.
guess you know the term.
Sure.
When you harvest different varietals together,
Right.
put them in the same bin, put them in the same press, and do the pressing. So you cannot separate them
You
anymore.
you
This
can't
is a-
blend anything.
This is a field blend.
The nature's blending it for you.
Yeah. And from this grape variety museum, we do a field blend called Simply Wow.
Does that come to America? Because I want to taste it.
Unfortunately, not for the moment.
Oh my goodness. There are a handful of wines that when I have these conversations that I want to taste. That'd be one of them. The other is there's a Pinot Noir from a particular part of Champagne, France, that I've been dying to get my hands on to taste. I want to taste what the Pinot Noir tastes like as a grape grown in that area, and they don't come here.
Yeah.
You guys keep the good stuff for yourself.
No, this is quite a tiny production.
So they're all right.
And to market over here, it's already a Rota Berliner a hand sale. What should this wine be?
I know, you're right. That'd be tough. I have another note here next to the Leth Riesling Classique, the 2020. Looks like the value is very high, but I wrote amazing next to this, and I did that because, Riesling has such a wide variety of character, and it can produce wines of extraordinarily dry to dessert wines. But this one had some elegance about it. Where's that coming from?
Riesling is one of the cool climate grape varieties par excellence. Everywhere where you have cooler climates, river valleys, a bit more balanced, Riesling cannot stand only heat. That needs an outbalanced climate with the necessary rainfall. And for our area, as we are considered to be such a climate condition, the Riesling with the soils is going in a very harmonious style of Riesling. There is yellow fruit, there is stone fruit components in the use, but what you will not that much notice is this kind of flinty, minerally, almost petrol-y style in the use. That doesn't exist on wines in our place. For this, you need to age Riesling a couple of years, and then you see those kind of very prominent flavors also appearing, but not on a young Riesling. There you have much more the fruit-driven style and a balanced acidity. That means we don't need to round the Riesling off with a lot of sugar.
No.
We almost do bone dry Rieslings.
Can you add
and still
sugar
accessible?
In Austria? Because Riesling, to me, and I had this discussion with our editor that writes our newsletter for us all the time. He thinks it's one of the great grapes of the world, and it is. And it's gone through waves of popularity in America. It's not necessarily that popular right now, but that could come back. Things change. The consumer changes so fast here that it could come back as one of the darlings of the wine world. And this particular version, like I said, is so elegant and void of that petrol. Some people will say it smells like kerosene, it smells like gasoline. I go, yeah, that's not untypical. But this one it was subtle,
Yep.
but there was something integrating about it. It seemed like it belonged there with the rest of the nose that I was getting.
That is definitely due to the soil type. In the beginning, I explained already that wine that's coming from Leth is a bit richer, has a bit more
Mm-hmm.
extracts. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and the same happens with Riesling. It's not that austere and
Yes, austere is a
lean.
good word. Not austere is a
Yeah,
good word.
that this kind of sometimes even harshness
Yes,
that doesn't exist on
right.
our on
It's
our
really great.
on our combination of terroir and climate.
Um, I see you have, like, for instance, you had some suckling. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, yeah, 16. I saw 16 points, but that's Jancis Robinson. That's okay. It's funny. We talk about this all the time
Yeah,
amongst ourselves. It's like, what does the 100-point scale do anyway? Because you're not going to talk about a score less than 70. So it's really a 20-point scale, and that's what Jancis has done. But
yeah,
you obviously submit your wines for ratings. To me, that's again more marketing. There's so many rating systems, and here's an example. Somebody brought me a wine, and I had a website years ago that dealt with only rated wine. So I just put up the thing. I didn't do very well, so I closed the site. But I only put a wine up there that had a rating, and it had to be 90 plus. And one woman sent me a wine, and she says, "I said, do you have a rating?" She goes, "No. Do you want one?" I go, "Well, yeah." She goes, "Okay, I'll call my friend." So you know, I said, "Well, I don't want that kind of rating." The guy was a master of wine or something, or a master somm, and he was going to give it a rating and send it down to me. And I'm like, "Well, that's not, where is the credibility of that?" And so, do we do this just because the marketplace wants it? Do we do it for self validation to know that our wines are competitive in the world market, or we just do it because everybody does it?
yeah. There are markets where definitely good ratings are helping,
Yes,
but I don't count that too much of interest
right,
for
good,
for me personally. There might be 100-point wine ratings and truly cannot finish a bottle.
right.
You
That's
know,
right.
so
You're
for me, the thing, the most important thing on a bottle of wine is drinkability. If you're gonna have it in front of you and you're finishing together a bottle
yes,
earlier before the evening has ended,
yeah, right.
that was
That's
a good wine. Yeah,
that's the rating. I'm going to do that. We're going to start a race, a clock.
yeah,
And like how long you think that you'll be
exactly.
you're done with the bottle. That's much better than some point scales.
There is, in fact, one Austrian event that measures the best wine. There are I don't know 100 people, and they're gonna have about 6 wines or 6 bottles
Yeah.
from I don't know 7, 8 different wines, and the best wine is those which is first finished. Yeah, the best wine of
I
the
don't
show is
think
that what is first finished. Yeah,
I don't think there's any other
funny,
reason.
but on the end, it comes from my personal opinion. It comes to the truth.
What it comes down to.
Drinkability is that what we want to show with our
Yes.
products,
That's
definitely.
and that's what it's about. Um, I try to tell people, you if you shop numbers, you're going to get wines you're not going to care for because a wine from the Canary Islands that's a grape you've never heard of can get a 95, and if you just buy 95 wines, it's not the 95 Napa Valley Cabernet.
Mm.
And so if you like those Napa Valley Cabernets, you're not going to like this Canary Islands, Sangiovese derivative. And so it doesn't do anybody any good to do that. Except I understand the marketability. We have to deal with that, and that's kind of what this club was founded on. Was my dad was a pioneer in 1972 in tasting everything that came into his wine shop. Nothing was on the shelf. And back then, the guy bringing the Jack Daniels or the Jim Beam bourbon would say, "Oh, by the way, there's Robert Mondavi Cabernet put on the shelf." My dad, "No, I'm not putting it on the shelf.
Mm.
You go back and open it, and I'll taste it. And if I like it, I'll put it on the shelf."
Yeah.
And I think that's that experience, all the years that we've been tasting. But I can't say I've ever had a Rocher Veltliner, so I can't really compare it to anything except for this one was very good. So this has been a fascinating conversation. We're already at 45 minutes, which is amazing. Um, what's next? What's next for the Leth family winery? Are you planning on other varietals? Are you looking at other properties to plant, or what's status quo right now?
You know, the what is now the challenge is to hand over to the next generation, but it is almost done. What we definitely see for us as important and making our life not really easier is partly the climate change.
Yes.
Um, it is not as dramatic as sometimes is described when it comes to okay, we will definitely have no Veltliner anymore in a couple of years. I don't see it that dramatic.
Yeah.
So we have to adapt our farming style. We have to adapt the vineyard work to the yearly's changing, because you can also get quite a cold year. So
Sure.
what you do else when you have planted grape varieties that thrive only under high under heat and dryness.
Hmm.
So what you need to adapt is definitely the work outside in the vineyard, uh, uh, at, mm, being a good match with the climate conditions in this year. What you have to have is maybe a bit better forecast, a bit better feeling about what could happen with this year when it goes on.
Hmm. Hmm.
So this will be something that must have better looked at than rather before it was okay. We're gonna do that in a way
Right.
that we did it for a
Right.
long time.
Well, there are some.
Those times seem to be over.
That seems like that's the case, and there are many wineries, particularly. It seems like Burgundy, France is most affected. California, kind of affected, but there are not rumors, but there are situations where they're harvesting 30, 60, 45 days ahead of they did 20 years ago,
Mm.
50 years ago. And this is not a political show, so they're not going to get the source of the climate change, but it's happening. But then there's times like that read a book about Champagne in the 1700s. Mini ice age was wreaked havoc on Champagne grapes, and for years they had to manage this. And who knows if it's going to reverse itself? But on the flip side of this, uh, and again, not political, so I'm not going to say the ramifications of climate change to humanity, but now there's regions of the world that are growing grapes that couldn't before because they got a little more, like Dorset, England is making incredible champagne right now, which I think is really good value. But so I can see farming practices changing. It's real. It's a
Yeah.
real issue, and
Yeah.
we have to learn to adapt to it.
Yeah.
Do you think Gruner? You think Gruner has runs the chance, and if it continues like this for 10 years, 5, 7 years, of not being able to propagate itself?
The prospective time, I don't think we need to talk
Worry
about
about it.
5 years or something.
So
Uh,
it's not that dramatic.
no.
Yeah.
At least that's my personal opinion.
Yeah.
Uh, Talking about the next 100 years, okay,
Yeah.
then it might be an issue, but
You
not
don't
the
care.
next 5 years.
Even your second generation is not gonna care. Third generation is not gonna care about
Not
that.
the
So,
next. Yeah.
because they're. I mean, look at they're growing Touriga Nacional in Bordeaux. I mean, how
Mm.
offensive is that? For the world of tradition down there. Um, well, we're out of time. It has been a huge pleasure. We didn't get to talk about food. We didn't get to talk about anything that dealt with. Maybe when I come out, we'll have that conversation, and we'll have some
Okay.
schnitzel or
Uh,
boiled
come,
beef and
come over
share
to
some of this.
Austria. We will have some Tafelspitz, boiled beef, and a
Ah,
glass of
sounds
Dona.
great. Sounds great with some nice acidic wine. Pleasure, Franz. Thank you again.
It was a pleasure for me, Paul.